My parents screamed, "If you don't like it, get out." Now they're broke, my brother's gone and they came to me. But I said, "Ask your golden boy." My name is Elias. I am 27 years old. And for as long as I can remember, my life has served as a continual reminder that I was always the second best in my family. I don't complain just for the purpose of complaining, but growing up witnessing your parents give everything to their favorite kid while you make do with scraps fractures something inside you. My brother Luca, who was 5 years my senior, was always the king of the home. I was the one who polished his crown. It all began when we were children. My parents, Victor and Helena, had a unique manner of dispersing their affection and finances. Luca, with his easy smile and "I deserve everything" attitude, always got the best new clothes, expensive toys, school trips, and even the most spacious room in the house. I, on the other hand, inherited his old clothes, damaged toys, and a mattress that groaned when I moved. If I asked for something, my mother would give me the look that said, "Don't be selfish, Elias. Not everything is for you." My father, on the other hand, would add, "Luca is the oldest, he needs more." As if being younger meant I had no rights. I remember one Christmas when I was around 10 years old. Luca, 15, asked for a mountain bike that cost a fortune. Without hesitation, my parents went into debt to buy it for him. I had requested for a soccer ball with great anticipation. It wasn't pricey, nothing out of the norm. When the day came, I saw Luca riding his new bike around the yard while my mother photographed him like a movie star. In contrast, I received a pair of socks and a cheap plastic ball that shattered after only 3 uses. When I inquired why they didn't get me the ball I wanted, my father looked at me with displeasure and said, "Don't be ungrateful, Elias. We can't spend on everything." But Luca always had money. The distinction became clearer with time. Luca was not exactly a genius. In reality, he barely graduated high school with dismal marks, and showed no desire in furthering his education or obtaining a job. But my parents rationalized everything. My mother would add, "He's a free spirit," as if laziness were a virtue. In contrast, I was always the responsible one. I received decent grades, helped around the house, and when I turned 16, I began working part-time at a grocery store to assist with expenditures. Not because I wanted to, but because they required it. My father Victor was an electrician, but his salary barely covered the essentials. My mother Helena was a homemaker who occasionally sold cakes to supplement her income. However, there were always priorities, and they all revolved around Luca. When he turned 18, my parents purchased him a used automobile. It was not much, but it worked. At that age, I still rode the bus to work. When I inquired why they didn't help me, my mother answered, "Luca needs the car to get around. You can manage." As if my time wasn't valuable. At 20, I graduated from high school with honors and began working full-time at a furniture manufacturer. It wasn't the best work in the world, but it paid well, and I felt glad to contribute to the household. However, my parents were quick to take advantage. "Elias, the bills are tight," my father would tell me each month. "We need you to put in more of your salary." And like an idiot, I did it. I handed over around 70% of my earnings. I paid for energy, water, internet, and even food. Meanwhile, Luca, then 25, did nothing. He spent his days at home, either playing video games, watching television, or going out with his pals. He made no contributions. I was tired up with seeing him laying on the couch as I came home fatigued from work, so I said, "Luca, why don't you look for a job? Even something simple, to help around the house." He chuckled as if I'd made a joke. "Work? Nah, little brother, I wasn't born for that. I was born to enjoy life." Then, with that mocking look I despise, he said, "You keep breaking your back. Someone has to pay the bills." I wanted to punch him, but I refrained. I knew if I did anything, my folks would side with him. They always have. Time passed, and the situation worsened. At 24, I was working double shifts at the factory to make a little extra money. I'd return home at 11 p.m., my arms aching and my back in bits, to find Luca playing on his new console, which my parents had purchased with leftover money. Where are the leftovers from? I was the one who paid for practically everything. I once viewed their internet bill and realized that they had subscribed to the most expensive package, including with premium channels, just so Luca could watch soccer in high definition. When I approached my mother, she told me, "Don't be envious, Elias. Your brother needs a distraction." A diversion from what? After doing nothing all day? I reached my breaking point at the age of 26. My father summoned me to the kitchen, accompanied by my mother, and informed me that they needed me to contribute more money. "The bills are very high, Elias. If you don't put in more, we won't be able to manage." I was already providing over 80% of my earnings. I hardly had enough money to purchase myself clothes or go out with friends once a month. When I asked them what they needed more of, my father seemed nervous and said vague things like, "Prices are going up, and life is expensive." But things did not add up. A month later, I learned the truth. Luca and his buddies had gone on a week-long beach holiday at an all-inclusive resort. How did I find out? Because he shared it all over social media. Photographs of him enjoying beers on the beach and laughing, while I was sweating and moving furniture at the factory. When I arrived home, I faced my parents. "Where did Luca get the money to go on a trip?" I inquired, though I already anticipated the answer. My mother tried to divert the subject, but my father, in his customary authoritative tone, told me, "That's none of your business, you worry about doing your part." I could not handle it anymore. My hands trembled with wrath. My part? I pay for everything in this house. The electricity, the water, the food, even the damn internet so Luca can watch his games. And now you ask for more so he can go on vacation? Why don't you make him work? He's 5 years older than me. My mother remained mute and stared at the floor, but my father became red. "You're not going to come here and tell us how to raise our children," he yelled. "Luca is different. He's not made for work like you are. You work. Your brother enjoys it. It's that simple. And if you don't like it, get out." These words stabbed me like a knife. I looked at my mother, expecting her to say anything or defend me, but she simply nodded, as if she agreed with everything. I felt a knot in my stomach, a combination of wrath and despair. My entire life, I had been the worker, the one who sacrificed, while Luca lived like a king. And now, on top of everything, they were telling me it was my responsibility. But at that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to be their victim longer. "Great," I responded with the calmest voice I could muster. "Then I'll leave, and you can pay your own bills. It's that simple." My father's expression changed immediately. It shifted from wrath to amazement, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. My mother raised her head, eyes wide. "You can't do this to us, Elias," she exclaimed, nearly yelling. "We raised you, we gave you everything." I gave out a sour laugh. Everything? The used socks and Luca's leftovers were everything? Without saying anything, I went up to my room, grabbed a rucksack and packed the essentials, clothes, documents, and whatever money I had saved. I did not say farewell. It was not worth it. That night I stayed in a low-cost hotel while looking for a room to rent. It was not simple, but after a week, I had located a little flat. It wasn't much, but it was the first time in my life that I felt I could breathe. But as expected, my parents would not let me go so lightly. The first call arrived 3 days after I moved out. My mother, Helena, used that tone to make me feel guilty. "Elias, how could you do this to us?" she asked, her voice shaking like she was going to cry. "We're your family. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us?" I remained silent and clenched the phone. I wanted to tell her that everything was just leftovers, that they never showed me the same love or support they did Luca. But I didn't. I simply said, "Mom, I'm busy. Goodbye," and hung up. I believed they'd get the message, but I was mistaken. A week later, Victor, my father, called. His voice was coarser as usual, but there was a tinge of desperation that I hadn't heard before. "Elias, this isn't a game," he added. "We need your help. We can't make ends meet, and you know we depend on you. Come home. We can fix this." I laughed. Not because it was hilarious, but because I couldn't believe his boldness. What should be fixed? Will I continue to be your ATM while Luca scrapes his belly? "No, Dad," I responded. "You said it yourself. If I don't like it, I should get out." Well, I got out. Figure it out yourselves. He hung up without saying anything else, but I knew it wasn't the end of the conversation. The calls became routine. Every day, at different times, my phone would vibrate, displaying my mother's or father's name. Initially, I responded more out of curiosity than anything else. My mother alternated between pleading and emotional blackmail. "Elias, please come back," she'd say. "We can't manage everything. Your brother is very depressed. He's not eating well, not sleeping. Don't you feel bad leaving him like this?" Luca. Depressed? How convenient. The last time I saw him he was playing on his new console, beer in hand, with no concern in the world. When I informed my mother this, she adjusted her tactics. "You're so ungrateful. We raised you, gave you a roof, food, clothes, and now you abandon us as if we were trash." I felt a twinge in my chest, but I was no longer the child who suppressed his shame. Clothes? You mean Luca's hand-me-downs or the broken mattress you gave me? Don't make me laugh, Mom. So I hung up. In contrast, my father was very forthright. Elias, you're the man of the house now, he once said to me, as if it were an honorific. Your brother isn't ready to work. You know how he is. But you're strong. You can handle this. Come back, and I promise things will be different. Different? How? Were they going to assign me the large room and ask Luca to work? Of course not. Everything would remain the same. Me working till I dropped, and Luca living like a prince. No, Dad, I replied. If you want money, tell Luca to get a job. He's 32 years old, not a child. He responded with a yell. Don't you talk about your brother. You don't understand anything. I hung up and stopped returning their calls. One day my mother arrived at the factory where I worked. I'm not sure how she discovered the apartment, but there she was, standing at the door with red eyes and untidy hair. Elias, please, she begged, disregarding my co-workers walking by. We can't go on like this. We're going to be evicted if we don't pay the rent. Your father is looking for another job, but it's not enough. You're our only hope. I looked at her and felt pity for a brief minute. But then I remembered how she ignored me and defended Luca while I broke my back. Mom, I'm not coming back, I stated gently but firmly. Ask Luca to work. He's the oldest, isn't he? Let him be responsible. She shook her head as if the concept was ludicrous. Luca can't. You know he's special. Special? No, just a lazy bum who had been spoiled his entire life. I turned and returned to work. When I peered out the window, I noticed her crying as she departed. Following that incident, I decided to block their numbers. I did not want any more drama or blackmail. I wanted to live my life, and for the first time, I was successful. I started getting out more and meeting new people. I made friends at the gym, including boys who invited me to play soccer on weekends. I even met a girl named Maya who worked at a coffee shop near my flat. It wasn't anything serious, but talking with her, joking, and drinking coffee without thinking about household expenditures was something I'd never done before. My salary, which used to disappear into my parents' hands, was now sufficient for me to save, buy things for myself, and live, and most importantly, to feel valued. 3 months had gone, and the peace I had discovered was broken when I received a call from my Aunt Sylvia, my mother's sister. She was always the only family member who treated me fairly. Elias, I don't want to meddle in your affairs, but you need to know what's going on, she added, her tone serious and almost sorrowful. She told me everything. After I departed, my parents tried to keep things as they were. However, without my money, everything fell apart. They couldn't afford to pay their rent or energy, let alone food. At first they assumed Luca would assist them. After all, he was their favorite son, to whom they had always given everything. But when they asked him to find work, Luca laughed in their faces. Me? Work? He asked. I'm not going to support old people. If Elias doesn't want to pay, you figure it out yourselves. He gathered his belongings and left. Nobody knew where he went, but my aunt assumed he was living with one of his pals and presumably wasting the little money he had left. Without Luca and without me, my parents were alone. The landlord of the flat where they lived gave them 1 month to pay what they owed, but they couldn't. They were ejected with no mercy. My father, who always boasted about being the man of the home, had to find employment as a plumber, a vocation he understood little about. He made a pittance, just enough to eat. My mother, who had never worked before, began sewing handmade coats to sell at a local market, but her shaky hands and lack of experience resulted in low-quality coats, and she barely produced enough to cover a couple of meals every day. They were now living in a cramped room in one of the city's most hazardous areas, where the walls were moldy and the stench of garbage permeated through the shattered windows. One day, while drinking coffee with Maya, I received a message from an unknown number. It was Luca. Hey little brother, how are you? It asked, as if we were closest buddies. I hear you're doing well. Can you lend me some money? I'm in a rough patch. I burst out laughing so hard that Maya was shocked. Luca, asking for money, the same person who insulted me for working and said he wasn't cut out for it. I didn't respond. I blocked the phone and resumed drinking my coffee. He could figure it out on his own, just like I did. Now when I think about my family, I don't feel guilty. I feel relieved. My parents created their own calamity by producing a kid like Luca while treating me as a servant. Luca, for his part, was left without a crown, and no one to pay for his desires, while I am finally living for myself. I don't know what will happen to them, and I honestly don't care. Maya sometimes asks if I have any regrets. They're your parents after all, she replies, with that soft expression that inspires me to be a better person. But I tell her the truth. I don't regret it. They chose Luca, and he abandoned them. I just chose to save myself. She nods. But I know she doesn't completely comprehend. Nobody can understand what I went through until they had lived it themselves. I'm writing this from my flat, with a beer in my hand and music playing in the background. Outside, the city is lit up at night. Tomorrow I have a soccer game with my friends. Maya and I are planning a trip to the beach over the weekend. It's not the ideal existence, but it's mine. Every dollar I make, every laugh I share, and every day I live without the burden of my family is a win. My parents and Luca believed they could use me indefinitely, that I would never revolt. But I did. And today, as they face the consequences of their actions, I am establishing my future. Update. It has been a year since I left my family, and today, as I stroll along the beach with Maya, the sun setting on the horizon, I sense a peace that I never imagined imaginable. My parents and Luca are only distant echoes, stuck in the wreckage of their own decisions. While I create a life for myself, I feel no guilt. Simply the knowledge that I did the right thing by freeing myself. Every stride I take demonstrates that I am more valuable than the scraps they offered me. And that freedom, that fairness, is my greatest accomplishment.